Sarah Mitchell wheeled herself away from the church in the pouring rain, her second-hand wedding dress soaking through, her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces by the man who had promised forever just minutes before their ceremony. She never knew that the stranger who would stop to help her, the kind man who would crouch in the rain to free her wheelchair from a broken grate, was James Crawford, one of the wealthiest men in the country, a billionaire widower who had been searching for something money could never buy since losing his wife 2 years earlier. She never knew that her simple act of accepting his help with quiet dignity, of saying thank you with tears streaming down her face, would awaken something in him he thought had died with his wife. And neither of them knew that this moment, this encounter born from her deepest humiliation, would become the beginning of a love that would heal them both and give his grieving daughter the mother she had been praying for. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. 3 years before that rain-soaked day outside the church, Sarah Mitchell had been a different woman. She had been 25 years old, full of dreams, working as a junior graphic designer at a small marketing firm, driving home from a late shift when a drunk driver ran a red light and changed everything in an instant. The impact, the screaming metal, the sensation of her world flipping upside down. And then the terrible stillness that followed. When she woke in the hospital 4 days later, the doctors told her, with clinical gentleness, that she would never walk again. The drunk driver had walked away with minor injuries. Sarah's spine had not been so fortunate. Her world had collapsed, but Sarah Mitchell did not collapse with it. She rebuilt, piece by painful piece, from a hospital bed that felt like a prison. Her parents had passed away when she was 19. A small plane crash that left her orphaned and alone. And now she had no one to lean on but herself. The insurance settlement was modest, barely enough to cover her medical bills and a few months of living expenses. She sold everything she owned, moved into a tiny studio apartment with a ramp and widened doorways, and taught herself to live in a world that had not been designed for wheels. She worked because working meant surviving, and surviving meant dignity. 2 jobs from home became her lifeline. By day, she designed logos and websites for small businesses who paid her far less than she was worth. By night, she answered emails and managed calendars for busy executives who never saw her face, never knew about the wheelchair, never had to make uncomfortable decisions about whether she was capable. She made just enough to pay rent, to buy groceries, to keep the lights on in her small corner of the world. Then, 2 years ago, she met Derek Thompson at a coffee shop. She had been struggling with the heavy door, and he had held it open with an easy smile. He saw the wheelchair, but he did not look away. He asked her name. He asked for her number. He told her she had beautiful eyes, and for the first time since the accident, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could love her exactly as she was. Derek had been attentive, sweet, patient. He said all the right things, held her hand, kissed her forehead, promised her that her disability did not define her, did not diminish her. When he proposed 6 months ago with a simple silver band he claimed had belonged to his grandmother, Sarah wept with joy and relief and hope. Today was supposed to be their wedding day. A small ceremony at a modest church on the edge of town. 12 guests, because Sarah had no family and few friends after years of isolation and struggle. A simple dress purchased from a consignment shop, grocery store flowers. A cake from the discount bakery. Nothing fancy, nothing extravagant, but it was supposed to be hers. It was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful. The morning of the wedding arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the thin curtains of Sarah's studio apartment. She sat in front of her small bathroom mirror, the secondhand wedding dress laid carefully across her bed, its ivory lace yellowed slightly with age but still beautiful in its simplicity. The dress had cost her $47 at a consignment shop 3 towns over, and she had cried when she found it. Not because it was perfect, but because it was all she could afford, and she was determined to feel like a bride despite everything. Rachel Morrison, her best friend since college, and the only person who had never disappeared after the accident, arrived at 8 in the morning with coffee and a forced smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Rachel helped Sarah into the dress, carefully maneuvering the fabric around the wheelchair, adjusting the small train so it would not catch in the wheels. "You look beautiful," Rachel said, but her voice carried something heavy, something unsaid. Sarah caught her friend's expression in the mirror. "What is it?" she asked quietly. Rachel hesitated, her hands stilling on the pearl buttons at Sarah's back. "Are you sure about this? About Derek?" The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Sarah felt her chest tighten. "Why would you ask me that today?" Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "He just seems, I do not know, distant lately. And his mother, Sarah, the way she looks at you." Sarah had noticed. Of course, she had noticed. Derek's mother, Patricia Thompson, had been polite but cold from the moment they met. Her smiles tight and practiced, her eyes always lingering on the wheelchair with barely concealed distaste. But Derek had assured her it did not matter, that his mother would come around, that love was stronger than prejudice. Sarah wanted desperately to believe him. They arrived at the church 45 minutes early. The building was small and plain, with chipped paint on the door and a parking lot full of cracks. But it was affordable, and the pastor had been kind when Sarah called to arrange the ceremony. Derek was already there, pacing near the altar in his rented suit, and when Sarah wheeled herself through the side entrance, she saw him flinch. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but she saw it. His smile when he approached was strained, his kiss on her cheek brief and distracted. "You look nice," he said, but he would not meet her eyes. Before Sarah could respond, Patricia Thompson appeared from a side room, her face pinched with displeasure. She took Derek by the arm, her grip firm and possessive, and pulled him toward the back hallway. "We need to talk," Patricia hissed, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "Right now." Derek glanced back at Sarah with something that looked almost like panic, then allowed himself to be led away. Sarah watched them disappear through a doorway, their voices rising in heated argument behind the thin walls. She could not make out the words, but she heard the tone, sharp and insistent from Patricia, weak and wavering from Derek. Rachel squeezed Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah," she whispered, "it is not too late to leave." Sarah sat alone near the altar, her hands trembling in her lap. When Patricia Thompson emerged from the hallway, Derek was not with her. The older woman's heels clicked against the worn wooden floor with sharp, deliberate precision, each step a declaration of purpose. She stopped directly in front of Sarah's wheelchair, close enough that Sarah had to tilt her head back to meet her gaze. "We need to have an honest conversation," Patricia said, her voice low and cutting. "Woman to woman." Sarah felt ice settle in her stomach. "Mrs. Thompson, if this is about the ceremony, we can wait a few more minutes." "This is not about timing." Patricia crossed her arms, her designer suit immaculate, her expression carved from stone. "This is about my son's future, which you are about to ruin." The words struck like a physical blow. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Patricia continued, relentless and cruel. "Do you really think you can be a proper wife? Look at yourself. You cannot even walk down an aisle. You cannot cook standing at a stove. Cannot clean a house properly. Cannot give him children without complications and risks. You are a burden, Sarah. And burdens do not make good wives. They make obligations. They make regrets." Each word was a knife, carefully placed, expertly twisted. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Refused to give this woman the satisfaction. "Derek loves me," Sarah whispered, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Derek pities you," Patricia corrected, her tone almost gentle now, which made it worse somehow. "There is a difference, and one day he will realize it. One day he will resent you for trapping him in a life of caretaking and sacrifice. I am trying to spare you both that pain." "Mom." Derek's voice came from the doorway, weak and strained. He stood there in his rented suit, his face pale, his eyes unable to settle on anything. "Mom, please." Patricia turned to her son, her expression softening with maternal concern. "Tell her, Derek. Tell her the truth." The small gathering of guests had gone silent. Sarah could feel their eyes on her. could hear the whispers starting like the rustle of dead leaves. Rachel moved to stand beside her wheelchair, a hand on Sarah's shoulder, protective and furious. Derek took 3 steps forward and stopped. He looked at Sarah. Finally. And what she saw in his eyes was not love. It was not even pity. It was fear and weakness and the desperate desire to escape. "I cannot do this," he said, his voice cracking. "I am sorry. I cannot spend my life taking care of someone." The church seemed to hold its breath. Sarah felt the world tilting, felt something inside her chest crack open and bleed. "You promised," she whispered. Derek looked away. Patricia took his arm, guiding him toward the side exit like a child being led away from danger. Several guests stood, uncomfortable and embarrassed, gathering their coats. The whispers grew louder. Someone laughed nervously. Sarah sat frozen in her wheelchair in her $47 dress, abandoned at the altar, drowning in humiliation so complete she could not even breathe. Sarah did not remember deciding to leave. She simply moved, her hands finding the wheels of her chair, propelling herself down the aisle she would never walk, past the faces she could not bear to see, past the flowers she had arranged herself, past the future that had just been torn away. She heard Rachel calling her name, heard footsteps behind her, but she could not stop, could not turn around, could not let anyone see her shatter completely. The church doors opened to gray skies and the first drops of rain, cold and merciless. "Sarah, wait," Rachel called from the doorway, her voice breaking. "Let me drive you home, please." "I need to be alone," Sarah said, and she did not recognize her own voice, flat and hollow and empty of everything. "Please, Rachel, just let me be alone." She did not wait for a response. She wheeled herself down the ramp, into the parking lot, onto the cracked sidewalk that ran alongside the busy street. The rain began in earnest, heavy drops that soaked through her dress within seconds, plastered her carefully curled hair to her face, washed away the makeup Rachel had so lovingly applied. Sarah did not care. She welcomed the rain, welcomed the cold, welcomed anything that might numb the agony tearing through her chest. She moved without direction, without purpose, her arms burning as she pushed herself forward through the downpour. The sidewalk was uneven and treacherous, broken in places from tree roots and neglect. But Sarah barely noticed. She was crying now, great heaving sobs that tore from her throat, her vision blurred by rain and tears until she could barely see where she was going. Then her front wheel caught. The broken grate appeared without warning, a jagged gap in the sidewalk where the metal had rusted through and fallen away. Her wheelchair lurched violently to the side, the wheel wedged deep in the opening, and Sarah pitched forward, catching herself on the armrests with a cry of pain and frustration. She tried to pull back, to free the wheel, but it was stuck fast. Her arms shook with effort. Weak from exhaustion and grief, the rain poured down harder, soaking her to the bone. And her dress, that beautiful secondhand dress she had been so proud of, dragged in the dirty water, pooling on the sidewalk. Cars passed on the street beside her, their tires sending up sprays of water. She could see faces in the windows, people glancing at her and looking quickly away, uncomfortable with her struggle, unwilling to stop, unwilling to help. One car slowed slightly, the driver peering out, and Sarah felt a flash of desperate hope, but then the car accelerated and disappeared around the corner. She was alone, stuck, soaking, broken. Sarah dropped her face into her hands and wept, her shoulders shaking, her body racked with sobs she could no longer control. This was her life. This was all her life would ever be, trapped and helpless and utterly, completely alone. Through the blur of rain and tears, Sarah heard the sound of a car slowing, tires splashing through puddles, coming to a complete stop on the street beside her. She did not look up. She could not bear another person driving away, another moment of being seen and dismissed. But this time, a car door opened. Footsteps approached, quick and purposeful. "Let me help you," a man's voice said, gentle and certain. Sarah raised her head. A black sedan idled at the curb, sleek and expensive but understated. The man standing before her was in his late 30s, dressed in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that looked soft and costly beneath a jacket beaded with rain. He held a large black umbrella, and as he stepped closer, he positioned it over her, shielding her from the downpour even as the rain soaked his own shoulders. His face was kind, with lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and sorrow, and when he looked at her, really looked at her, there was no pity in his gaze, only concern. "I am fine," Sarah managed, though her voice shook and betrayed the lie. "Please, just go." "Your wheel is stuck," he observed calmly, crouching down to examine the grate without waiting for permission. "This looks like it has been broken for a while. The city should have fixed this." "I can handle it," Sarah insisted, but even as she spoke, she tried again to free the wheel and failed, her arms trembling with exhaustion. The stranger straightened, still holding the umbrella over her. Water dripped from his dark hair, and she noticed his eyes were gray, the color of the storm clouds overhead, but somehow warm despite it. "I am sure you can handle many things," he said quietly, "but right now you are stuck, and I am here. Let me help." "You do not understand," Sarah whispered, fresh tears mixing with the rain on her face. "I cannot. I do not need." Her voice broke completely. She was too tired, too broken, too defeated to finish. The stranger did not leave. He did not press. He simply stood there, holding the umbrella steady over her head, patient as the rain drummed against the fabric. When he spoke again, his voice carried something deeper than kindness, something that sounded like understanding born from his own pain. "Everyone needs help sometimes," he said gently. "There is no shame in it. There is only shame in driving past someone who needs you and choosing not to stop." Sarah looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his face that made her chest ache. He meant every word. "Okay," she whispered finally, surrendering. "Okay." The stranger knelt beside her wheelchair, his expensive clothes pressing into the wet sidewalk without hesitation. He examined the trapped wheel with focused attention, his hands careful as he tested the angle, the depth of the problem. "The wheel is wedged at an angle," he said, more to himself than to her. "If I lift from here while you pull back, it should come free." He set the umbrella down, propped against her armrest, so it still sheltered her, and gripped the frame of her wheelchair with both hands. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Sarah pulled back as he lifted, and with a grinding screech of metal, the wheel came free. She rolled backward, suddenly mobile again, and felt an absurd rush of relief and gratitude that brought fresh tears to her eyes. The stranger retrieved his umbrella, brushing rain from his face. "Where can I take you?" he asked. "I am fine," Sarah started, but he shook his head gently. "You are soaked through and it is pouring. Let me drive you home, please." Sarah looked down at herself, at her ruined dress, at the water dripping from her hair, and realized she had no fight left, no pride left. "I live on Maple Street," she whispered, the small apartment building with the blue awning. He helped her to his car, loading her wheelchair into the trunk with practiced efficiency that suggested he had done this before. The interior of the sedan was warm and dry, leather seats soft beneath her. Classical music played softly from the speakers, something gentle and melancholy that matched the rain against the windows. He drove carefully, attentively, navigating the wet streets with the confidence of someone who had driven these roads many times. He did not ask about the wedding dress, though she saw his eyes flick toward it. He did not ask why she had been alone on that broken sidewalk. Instead, he talked about small things, gentle things, his voice a soothing counterpoint to the storm. "The rain is supposed to clear by evening," he said. "Tomorrow is meant to be beautiful." Sarah said nothing, but she listened. And somehow his voice, this stranger's voice, was the first thing all day that did not hurt. He noticed her hands trembling in her lap, noticed the way she held herself together by the thinnest of threads, and he understood without words what had happened. When they arrived at her building, he retrieved her wheelchair and helped her without making her feel helpless, a skill most people never learned. Before he returned to his car, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple white card. "If you ever need anything," he said, pressing it into her palm. "Anything at all, call me." Sarah looked down at the card through the rain. No company name, no title, no email address. Just a name, James Crawford, and a phone number written in clean, simple type. "Thank you," she managed. He nodded once, climbed back into his car, and drove away into the rain. Sarah sat in her apartment hours later, the card still clutched in her hand, and wondered who James Crawford was and why. On the worst day of her life, a stranger had been kinder to her than the man who had promised forever. The days after the wedding that never was blurred together into a gray fog of pain and emptiness. Sarah stopped answering her phone after the first dozen calls from concerned clients, wondering where their designs were, why their emails were going unanswered. She stopped checking her email altogether. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping properly, stopped doing anything except sitting in her darkened apartment and staring at the walls while the world continued without her. Rachel came by twice, knocking persistently, calling through the door with increasing worry. Sarah pretended not to be home. She could not face kindness right now. She could not face anything that required her to be human, to respond, to care. The grief was too heavy, crushing her beneath its weight until even breathing felt like too much effort. The accident had taken her legs. Derek had taken everything else. On the 7th day, the eviction notice arrived. The landlord slid it under her door with an apologetic note explaining he had been patient, but 3 months of unpaid rent was his limit. Sarah stared at the paper with dull, exhausted eyes. Derek had promised to help with rent after the wedding. He had promised many things. She had $800 in her bank account, and rent was $1,200. She had no savings, no family, no safety net. She had nothing. That night, Sarah sat in her wheelchair in the dark and thought about giving up, not in any dramatic way, but simply ceasing to fight, to struggle, to pretend that any of this was worth the constant, exhausting battle of existing in a world that had not been made for her. It would be so easy to just stop. The thought terrified her because it also comforted her, and that was when she knew she had reached the edge of something dangerous. Her hand, trembling and uncertain, found the simple white card on her nightstand. James Crawford, a stranger who had stopped in the rain. She turned the card over and over in her fingers, pride warring with desperation, shame wrestling with survival. She did not want to call. She did not want to be the broken woman begging for help from someone who had already done too much. But she also did not want to be homeless, did not want to give up, did not want Derek and his mother to be right about her being nothing but a burden who could not survive on her own. With shaking fingers, Sarah picked up her phone and dialed the number. Each ring felt like an eternity. She almost hung up. She should hang up. This was pathetic, calling a stranger, asking for help when she had already taken so much. "Hello?" His voice was warm, immediate, as if he had been waiting. "This is Sarah," she whispered, her voice cracking. "From the rain. I am sorry to bother you, but I did not know who else to call." "Sarah," James said, and there was something in the way he spoke her name that suggested relief, as if he had been hoping she would reach out. "You are not bothering me." "Not at all." The kindness in his voice almost broke her. Sarah closed her eyes, gathering courage. "I need help," she admitted, the words like glass in her throat. "I am about to be evicted. I have been unable to work since that day. I was wondering if perhaps you knew of any job openings. Anything. I can do graphic design, administrative work, data entry. I just need something." Silence on the other end. But it was not the uncomfortable silence of judgment. It was the silence of someone thinking, considering, choosing his words carefully. "I need a personal assistant," James said finally. "Someone organized, creative, good with people. Someone I can trust. The pay is generous, more than generous, and the position would start immediately if you are interested." Sarah felt her heart skip, hope and suspicion tangling together. You do not even know me. You do not know if I am qualified. You managed 2 jobs while rebuilding your life after an accident that would have destroyed most people." James replied simply, "You showed up to your wedding with grace even when you must have been terrified. You accepted help when you needed it but never demanded it. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you help a complete stranger?" James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of emotion she had not heard before, something raw and honest and real. "You helped me that day too," he said softly. "You reminded me that dignity is not about circumstances. It is not about what happens to us. It is about how we carry ourselves through it. I have been searching for something real in a world full of people who only see what I can give them. You saw me as just a man with an umbrella. That mattered more than you know." Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. But these were different. These carried something other than pain. "The job is real," James continued. "The offer is genuine. You would be helping me as much as I would be helping you. Perhaps more." Sarah thought of the eviction notice, of the empty apartment, of the choice between pride and survival. But she also thought of gray eyes in the rain, of a stranger who had not looked away, of a voice that spoke to her like she mattered. "When can I start?" she asked, and felt something that might have been hope flicker to life in her chest. James arrived at Sarah's apartment building the next morning in the same black sedan, punctual and calm. He helped her into the car with the same practiced ease, and Sarah found herself studying him more carefully in the daylight. His clothes were expensive but understated, his watch simple, his manner that of someone comfortable with himself but carrying something heavy beneath the surface. "I thought we would be going to your office," Sarah said, as they drove through tree-lined streets away from the commercial district. "We are," James replied with a small smile. "Just not the kind of office you are probably imagining." They pulled up to a modest 2-story building in a quiet residential neighborhood, the kind of place that could have been a converted home. No corporate logos, no gleaming glass, no indication of what business happened inside. James led her through the front door into a warmly furnished space with comfortable couches, bookshelves, and afternoon sunlight streaming through large windows. "Daddy!" A small voice called from somewhere upstairs, young and hesitant. "Down here, sweetheart," James called back, his entire demeanor softening. A little girl appeared at the top of the stairs, 8 years old, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and her father's gray eyes. She wore jeans and a purple sweater, and she clutched a worn stuffed rabbit to her chest like a shield. She looked at Sarah with cautious curiosity, then back at her father. "Lily, this is Sarah," James said gently. "She is going to be spending time with us." Lily descended the stairs slowly, staying close to the wall. When she reached the bottom, she whispered something too quiet for Sarah to hear. James crouched to his daughter's level. "Sarah is very kind. You will like her." He straightened and turned to Sarah, and his expression held vulnerability she had not seen before. "This is my real job for you. Help Lily. She is struggling in school, struggling with other children, struggling with everything, really. She needs someone patient, creative, kind. Someone who understands that being different does not mean being broken." Understanding washed over Sarah like a wave. This was never about administrative work or business tasks. This was about a grieving child and a father who did not know how to reach her. "Her mother died 2 years ago," James continued quietly, confirming what Sarah had already guessed. "Car accident. Lily has not been the same since. She barely speaks at school, has no friends, spends most of her time alone. I have tried therapists, specialists, everything. Nothing has worked." Lily watched them both with enormous eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. Sarah wheeled herself closer to the little girl, staying at her level, making herself small and non-threatening. "Hello, Lily? I like your rabbit. What is their name?" Lily hugged the rabbit tighter, considering. "Hopscotch," she whispered finally. "That is a wonderful name," Sarah said softly. I had a rabbit once, too. Mine was named Buttons. Something flickered in Lily's eyes, the faintest spark of interest, and Sarah felt purpose stir in her chest for the first time in weeks. The first days with Lily were quiet, careful, like approaching a wounded bird. Sarah did not push, did not demand conversation or engagement. Instead, she brought colored pencils and blank paper, and she drew. Simple things at first, flowers and trees and clouds, her hand moving steadily across the page while Lily watched from across the table, hopscotch clutched in her small arms. On the third day, Lily reached for a purple pencil and drew a single star in the corner of Sarah's page. It was the first step forward, tiny but monumental. Sarah began telling stories as she drew, weaving tales of brave princesses and kind dragons and children who found magic in unexpected places. Lily listened with intense focus, and slowly, session by session, she began to add her own drawings to the stories, her pictures becoming a language when her voice still struggled to form words. One afternoon, while Lily was focused on coloring a garden scene, James sat down across from Sarah in the kitchen, 2 cups of tea between them. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that lived in the bones and would not be cured by sleep. "She is opening up to you," he said quietly, something like wonder in his voice. "I have not seen her this engaged in 2 years. She just needs someone who does not expect her to be fixed," Sarah replied. "She needs time to heal at her own pace." James nodded, his fingers wrapping around the warm cup. "My wife, Emma, died in a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light." Sarah's breath caught. The same type of accident, the same senseless violence of someone else's choice destroying innocent lives. "She was killed instantly," James continued, his voice hollow with old grief. "Lily was in the car. She survived without a scratch physically, but inside." He gestured helplessly. "I do not know how to reach her. I do not know how to be enough for her when I am barely holding myself together." Sarah saw it then, really saw it. The beautiful house that felt empty. The wealth that could not buy what he needed most. The isolation of a man who had everything except the one thing that mattered. He worked from home now, she learned, managing his business remotely so he could be physically present for Lily. But emotionally he was drowning, unable to connect with his daughter through the wall of grief that separated them both. "You are enough," Sarah said firmly. "You stopped in the rain for a stranger. You are trying every day. That is enough." Something passed between them then. Recognition and understanding. 2 people who had survived different versions of the same devastation. Later, as the sun set through the windows, Lily brought her drawing to show them both. A picture of 3 people holding hands beneath a bright sun. And she smiled. Just barely. Just enough. 3 weeks into working with Lily, Sarah arrived early one morning to find the house quiet. James had mentioned a conference call, so she let herself in with the key he had given her and wheeled into the study where she and Lily usually worked. A business magazine lay open on the side table, left there carelessly, as if someone had been reading it and set it down in haste. Sarah glanced at it, then froze. James's face stared back at her from the glossy cover, professional and composed in a tailored suit she had never seen him wear. The headline blazed across the top in bold letters. "James Crawford, tech billionaire, steps back from empire to focus on family." Her hands trembled as she picked up the magazine, flipping through pages that detailed his story. Founder and CEO of Crawford Technologies, one of the largest software companies in the world, net worth in the billions. A man whose name appeared regularly in financial news, whose decisions affected thousands of employees, whose influence reached into corners of the tech industry Sarah had never even considered. She thought of the modest building where they worked, the simple way he dressed, the black sedan that was expensive but not ostentatious. He had been hiding in plain sight, and she had never suspected. That evening, after Lily had gone upstairs to read before bed, Sarah found James in the kitchen making tea. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "I saw the magazine," she said simply. James's hand stilled on the kettle. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Waiting. You are James Crawford," Sarah continued. Not just James Crawford who stopped in the rain. James Crawford who built a technology empire. Why did you not tell me? James set down the kettle and leaned against the counter. And for the first time since she met him, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. Everyone wants something from me, he said quietly. Business opportunities, investments, donations, connections, access. People see the money and the name, and that is all they see. They perform, they calculate, they strategize. But you, he met her eyes. You just wanted help getting unstuck from a grate. You said thank you like I had given you the world when all I did was lift a wheel. That meant everything. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. So you lied. I omitted, James corrected gently. I wanted someone who saw me. Not what I own, not what I can provide. Just me. I needed that more than you can imagine. I needed you to be real. I am real, Sarah whispered. I have always been real. I know, James said, and his voice broke slightly. That is why I could not tell you. I was afraid you would change. Afraid you would start seeing the money instead of seeing me. I could not lose that. I could not lose you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was quite ready to name. The revelation changed nothing, and somehow that changed everything. Sarah arrived the next morning at the same time, worked with Lily in the same gentle way, and when James brought them lunch, he was still just James, still the man who crouched down to speak with his daughter at eye level. Still the person who asked Sarah's opinion about picture books and whether purple or blue was better for painting skies. The money did not matter because it had never been what connected them. Lily blossomed like a flower finally given enough sunlight. She spoke in full sentences now, told rambling stories about Hopscotch's adventures, laughed at Sarah's silly voices when they read together. She drew pictures constantly, her art transforming from dark scribbles to bright scenes full of color and life. She still had difficult days, moments when grief swept over her like a shadow. But Sarah sat with her through those moments, never trying to fix what could not be fixed. Simply being present. 6 weeks after Sarah started, James made a suggestion that felt inevitable even as it surprised her. There is a cottage on the property, he said one evening. It is small but fully accessible. You would have your own space, your privacy, but you would be close if Lily needed you. Or, if I needed you. He added the last part quietly, almost as an afterthought. But Sarah heard what he did not say. She moved in the following weekend. The cottage was perfect. One level with wide doorways and a ramp, decorated simply but thoughtfully, as if he had been planning this for a while. It was close enough to the main house that she could see its lights through the trees, far enough that she felt independent. Not like a charity case living on someone's property. James and Sarah began having dinner together after Lily went to sleep. It started accidentally, James bringing leftovers to the cottage one night, and somehow it became their routine. They sat across from each other at her small kitchen table and talked about things neither had spoken about in years. Loss and survival, and the terrible weight of continuing when part of you had died. James told her about Emma, about the guilt of surviving when she did not, about watching his daughter's light dim and feeling powerless to stop it. Sarah told him about the accident, about the long months of rehabilitation, about Derek's betrayal and the humiliation that still stung. They understood each other in ways few people could. Two souls who had been broken and were learning, slowly, to be whole again. An unexpected friendship formed in those quiet evening hours. Something deeper than gratitude or obligation. Something that felt like coming home after a long and exhausting journey. The notice about the school talent show arrived in Lily's backpack on a Tuesday afternoon, crumpled and nearly forgotten. Sarah smoothed it out on the table, reading about an opportunity for students to share their talents with families and classmates. She watched Lily's face carefully, saw the flicker of longing followed immediately by fear. "Would you want to do this?" Sarah asked gently, not pushing, just opening the door. Lily bit her lip, her small fingers twisting in Hopscotch's worn ears. "I want to," she whispered, "but I am scared. What if everyone laughs? What if I mess up? What if everyone loves it? Sarah countered softly. What if you are amazing? Over the next 3 weeks, they prepared. Lily decided to present a painting she had created, a large canvas showing a garden full of flowers. Each one painted with painstaking care and labeled with names she had invented. While she painted, Sarah helped her practice what she would say, how she would explain her art, how to stand in front of people without feeling like the world would swallow her whole. James watched from doorways and windows. Observe the infinite patience Sarah showed his daughter, the way she never expressed frustration when Lily needed to practice the same words 20 times, the way she celebrated every small victory like it was a miracle. He watched Sarah's face light up when Lily laughed, watched her wipe away tears when Lily had a setback, watched the genuine, unconditional love she poured into his child, and he realized, with certainty that took his breath away, that he was in love with her. The thought terrified him. Emma had been gone only 2 years. Was it too soon? Was he betraying her memory? And beyond that, the complexity of what he felt, the way Sarah had become essential to his life and Lily's life, the fear that if he told her and she did not feel the same, he would lose the person who had brought light back into their home. Sarah felt it too. The shift between them, the way James's eyes lingered, the way his hand would brush hers when passing a cup of tea, the way her heart hammered when he smiled at her. She felt the pull toward him, toward this life, toward this family that had welcomed her when she had nothing. But late at night in her cottage, doubt crept in like frost. She looked down at her legs that would never work, at her wheelchair that would always be part of her, and thought about what James deserved: someone whole. Someone who could run with Lily in the yard, who could dance with him at events, who could give him more children if he wanted them. Someone without limitations. Someone better than her. The elementary school auditorium smelled of floor wax and nervous energy. Parents and families filled the seats, cameras ready, as children waited backstage in various states of excitement and terror. Sarah sat in the front row beside James, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, more nervous than Lily herself. She will be wonderful, James whispered. But Sarah could hear the anxiety beneath his words. This was Lily's first public performance in 2 years, her first time willingly standing in front of people since her mother died. When Lily's name was called, she walked onto the stage carefully carrying her large canvas painting, hopscotch tucked under one arm for courage. She set up the painting on the easel provided, and for a long moment she stood frozen, her eyes scanning the crowd. Sarah saw the panic starting, saw Lily's hands beginning to shake. Then Lily found Sarah's face in the audience. Sarah smiled and nodded, a silent encouragement, and Lily took a deep breath. "This is my garden of special flowers," Lily said, her voice small but clear. "Each flower is someone or something important to me. This one is Hopscotch, my rabbit. This one is my teacher, Mrs. Henderson. This one is my daddy. She pointed to a tall, strong sunflower in the center of the painting. "And this one," Lily continued, pointing to a beautiful white lily with delicate petals, "is my mommy in heaven. She watches over the garden even though we cannot see her." Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks. James's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with hers, warm and certain. "And this one," Lily said, pointing to a flower unlike any of the others, something imagined and magical with rainbow petals, "is the angel who taught me it is okay to be sad, but also okay to be happy. She taught me that broken things can still be beautiful. She taught me how to smile again." The angel was Sarah. Everyone in that room knew it, and the applause that followed was thunderous. Lily beamed, actually beamed, and took a small bow before running off stage. James squeezed Sarah's hand, and when she looked at him, she saw tears in his eyes too. And something else, something that looked like love and hope and gratitude, too big for words. The moment stretched between them, charged and significant, his hand still holding hers, his eyes asking a question he had not yet found the courage to speak aloud. "Sarah?" A voice cut through the applause, cold and unwelcome. Sarah's head snapped around. Derek stood at the end of the row, his face a mixture of shock and calculation. He wore an expensive suit she had never seen before, and he held his phone like evidence. "I saw the news coverage," Derek said, his eyes flicking between Sarah and James. "James Crawford's daughter performs at school talent show. I had no idea you were working for James Crawford." Sarah wheeled herself toward the parking lot. James beside her with Lily's hand in his, the little girl chattering excitedly about her performance. Derek followed, his footsteps quick and determined on the pavement behind them. "Sarah, wait," Derek called. "Please, just let me talk to you." Sarah stopped, turning her wheelchair to face him. James stood protectively close, but she raised a hand slightly, indicating she could handle this. "What do you want, Derek?" Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. Derek ran his hand through his hair, arranging his face into what he probably thought was remorseful contrition. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was scared, confused, and my mother, she pressured me. But I have thought about it every day since, and I realize now that I love you. I want you back. We could be good together." Sarah stared at him, searching his face for any genuine feeling, and found only calculation. His eyes kept darting to James, to the expensive car in the parking lot, to the reality of who James Crawford was and what that meant. "I did not know you would land on your feet like this," Derek continued, taking a step closer. "You are resourceful, always have been. And I think if we tried again, really tried, we could make it work. Think about it, Sarah. We were good once." Understanding crashed over Sarah like a wave. This was not about love. This had never been about love. This was about access to wealth, to connections, to a billionaire's world that Derek suddenly wanted to be part of. "You are pathetic," Sarah said quietly, and felt nothing but disgust. Derek's face hardened. "Pathetic? I am not the one who attached myself to a rich man the second I got dumped. How long did you wait, Sarah? A week? Or did you plan this all along? That is enough." James's voice cut through the air like steel. He handed Lily to a nearby teacher who had been watching with concern, then stepped forward, placing himself between Sarah and Derek. "You do not get to speak to her like that," James said, his tone calm but carrying unmistakable authority. Derek laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Of course you are defending her. She has you wrapped around her finger, does she not? Poor, helpless woman in a wheelchair, tugging at your heartstrings. She does not need to land on her feet," James said, his voice quiet and absolutely certain. "She never fell. You did." The words hung in the air, final and devastating. Derek's face flushed with anger and humiliation. "You will regret this," Derek spat, backing away. "Both of you." He turned and stalked toward his car, leaving only silence and the cool evening air in his wake. Derek's car peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing, but his parting words echoed in the silence he left behind. Legal action, manipulation, claims that Sarah had used her disability to exploit a vulnerable widower and his daughter. The accusations were absurd, but Sarah knew that absurd things could still cause damage, could still create problems, could still hurt the people she cared about. "I should quit," Sarah said suddenly, her voice shaking. "I should leave before he causes trouble for you and Lily. I cannot let him drag your name through the mud, because of me." James turned to look at her, his expression fierce. "No, you do not understand," Sarah insisted, panic rising in her chest. "He will go to the media. He will make up stories. He will try to paint me as some opportunist who took advantage of you. I cannot let that happen. You and Lily have been through enough." "Sarah," James said, crouching down so they were eye level, his hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair. "You are family now. We do not abandon family." The word hit Sarah like a physical force. Family. Not employee, not helper, not someone temporarily useful. Family. Lily appeared beside them, having escaped from the teacher, hopscotch dangling from her hand. She looked between her father and Sarah with those enormous gray eyes, processing the tension she could feel but not fully understand. "Does this mean Sarah can stay forever?" Lily asked, her voice small and hopeful and innocent in the way only children can be, cutting through adult complications to the simple truth beneath. James and Sarah looked at each other, and in that look passed months of unspoken feelings, of growing closeness, of healing and hope, and the terrifying possibility of love after loss. Sarah saw everything she wanted in his eyes, everything she believed she did not deserve. James saw everything he needed in hers, everything he had been afraid to reach for. "If she wants to," James said softly, still holding Sarah's gaze. The words meant for both his daughter and the woman who had become essential to their existence. Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks, hot and unstoppable. She thought of the rain and the broken grate, of the wedding that never happened, of the stranger who stopped when no one else would. She thought of Lily's laughter and James's quiet strength, and the cottage that felt like home. She thought of what it meant to be chosen, to be wanted, to be loved, not despite her limitations but including them. All of her, exactly as she was. "I want to," Sarah whispered, and then louder, stronger, certain. "I want to stay forever." Derek's threats evaporated like morning fog under sunlight. No lawyers called. No media stories appeared. No drama materialized beyond his wounded pride. He disappeared back into whatever life he had been building without her. And Sarah felt only relief that he was gone. Life settled into something that felt almost normal, almost possible. Sarah's days with Lily expanded beyond lessons and art projects. She was there when Lily woke from nightmares, there to braid her hair before school, there to celebrate small victories and comfort small sorrows. She read bedtime stories and kissed scraped knees and attended parent-teacher conferences beside James, like they were a unit, a team, a family, in everything but name. Lily started calling her Sarah Mom when she thought no one was listening, testing the word quietly to see how it felt. James and Sarah orbited each other carefully, drawn together but hesitant, their connection deepening with every shared dinner, every late-night conversation, every look that lasted a heartbeat too long. They both felt it. The pull, the possibility, but neither knew how to bridge the gap between what was and what could be. Then came the anniversary. 3 years to the day since the accident that had changed Sarah's life forever. She had not told anyone, had not marked it on any calendar. But her body remembered, her heart remembered, and when evening came she found herself alone in her cottage, staring at the ceiling, crying silent tears for the woman she used to be and the life that had been stolen. James knocked softly on her door, carrying 2 cups of tea, a routine he had established weeks ago. When she did not answer immediately, he let himself in and found her in the dimness, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah." He set down the tea and was beside her in an instant. "What is wrong? What happened?" 3 years ago today," she managed, her voice breaking. "The accident. 3 years since everything changed." James pulled a chair close, sitting so they were level. His hand finding hers. "I keep thinking," Sarah continued, the words tumbling out now, painful and raw, "about everything I cannot give you. I am broken, James. My body does not work the way it should. I cannot dance with you, cannot run with Lily, cannot give you more children. How can I be what you and Lily need when I am only half of what a woman should be?" The words hung between them, her deepest fear finally spoken aloud. Ugly and honest and devastating in the quiet cottage. James was quiet for a long moment, his hand warm around hers, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "When Emma was dying in the hospital, in those final minutes before she slipped away, she made me promise her something." He paused, gathering strength. "She told me to find someone who sees me, really sees me. Not my money, not my name, not what I can provide. Someone real. She made me swear I would not spend the rest of my life alone, that I would find that person and not let fear stop me from loving again." Sarah looked up at him through her tears, her heart pounding. "You are the most real person I have ever met," James continued, his voice breaking. "You see Lily, not as a project or a responsibility, but as the beautiful wounded, brave little girl she is. You see me, not as James Crawford the billionaire, but as a man trying desperately to be a good father, trying to survive his grief, trying to find meaning in a world that took away the person he loved most. And you let us see you, all of you. Your strength and your pain and your fear and your incredible stubborn dignity. James, Sarah whispered, but he was not finished. I love you, he said simply, powerfully, the words falling between them like stones into still water, sending ripples through everything. I am in love with you. I have been for months, maybe since that day in the rain when you looked at me like I was just a man with an umbrella. I love you, and I am terrified of losing you, and I cannot pretend anymore that you are just Lily's teacher or my employee or my friend. Sarah felt her world shift, felt everything she had been holding back break free. I love you too, she said, crying harder now. But I cannot give you more children. I cannot be a traditional wife. I do not want traditional, James interrupted, fierce and certain. I want you. Lily wants you. We are already a family, Sarah. We have been for months. The only question is whether you want us the way we want you. Completely. Forever. Sarah reached up, her hand trembling as it touched his face. I want you, she whispered. Both of you. Forever. James leaned forward, and when their lips met it was tender and careful and full of promises neither had thought they would ever make again. It was healing and hope, and the beginning of something neither had dared to believe possible. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying, both were smiling, both were home. 6 months later, on a perfect spring morning when the world seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, Sarah Mitchell became Sarah Crawford in a garden filled with white roses and gentle sunlight. The ceremony took place on James's property, in the space between the main house and the cottage that had become Sarah's refuge, under an arch woven with flowers that Lily had helped choose. There were 20 guests, no more. Only the people who truly mattered. Rachel stood beside Sarah as her maid of honor, tears streaming down her face before the ceremony even began. James's closest friends, people who had stood by him through Emma's death and the dark years that followed, sat in chairs arranged in a small semicircle. No strangers, no business associates, no one who did not genuinely love the two people standing at that altar. Sarah wore a dress that James had insisted on buying, ivory silk that flowed like water, custom designed to be beautiful. While she sat, the fabric pooling elegantly around her wheelchair, which had been decorated with white roses and trailing ribbons. She looked like a bride, like herself, like everything she had ever wanted to be. Lily served as flower girl, walking down the makeshift aisle with hopscotch tucked under one arm and rose petals clutched in her other hand, scattering them with serious concentration. When she reached the front, she turned to face the guests, her small voice clear and strong. Sarah taught me that love is not about walking or running, Lily said, the words she had practiced with her father. It is about staying. It is about being there even when things are hard. It is about seeing someone and choosing them every single day. That is what real love is. There was not a dry eye in the garden. The vows James and Sarah exchanged were simple and devastating in their honesty. They did not promise to change each other or fix each other or complete each other. They promised to accept wholly, to love fully, to stay through joy and sorrow, through easy days and impossible ones. They promised to be family, to build a life together, to honor what they had survived and celebrate what they had found. When the pastor pronounced them married and James leaned down to kiss his wife, Sarah thought of another wedding, another dress, another groom who had walked away. She thought of rain and humiliation and a broken grate on a sidewalk. And she was grateful, and possibly grateful, that Derek had left, because it had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this love that was real and hard-won, and absolutely worth every moment of pain it had taken to find it. 1 year after the wedding, Sarah Crawford sat in the office of the nonprofit she had founded, a space filled with natural light and accessible design, where people with disabilities came to find not just employment opportunities but dignity, purpose, and hope. The organization was called Unstuck. Named after the day a stranger helped her free her wheelchair from a broken grate, and, in doing so, freed her from a life she had thought was her only option. James had provided the funding, but Sarah provided the heart. And together they had built something that changed lives every single day. Lily, now 10 years old, thrived in ways none of them had dared to hope for 2 years ago. She had friends, real friends, who came over for playdates and birthday parties. She excelled in art class and read voraciously and told anyone who would listen about her 2 moms, one in heaven watching over her and one at home who made the best pancakes and gave the best hugs. She was confident and kind, marked by loss but not defined by it. Proof that healing was possible when love was patient and genuine. James and Sarah were stronger than ever. Their marriage built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that most couples spent lifetimes trying to achieve. They had built their love slowly, carefully, honestly, and it showed in every easy conversation, every shared laugh, every crisis navigated together with grace. On this particular evening, they sat together at dinner in the main house, the 3 of them around the table that had become the center of their family life. Lily chattered about her day, about a painting she was working on, about a book she wanted them to read together. It was ordinary and perfect. The kind of moment Sarah had stopped believing was possible during those dark days after the wedding that never happened. After dinner, as Lily played in the yard with hopscotch, now worn nearly threadbare but still beloved, James and Sarah sat on the porch watching her, his hand wrapped around hers the way it always was, solid and certain and home. Sarah thought about Derek, about the church, about the rain and the humiliation that had felt like the end of everything. She thought about how rejection had led her to real love, how being abandoned had brought her to a family, how the worst day of her life had been the doorway to the best days she would ever know. James squeezed her hand gently, drawing her attention. "Thank you for getting stuck that day," he said softly, his gray eyes warm with love and gratitude. Sarah smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder, watching their daughter play in the fading light. "Thank you for stopping," she whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of her being.